Welcome to our deep dive into one of the most enigmatic and debated periods of history, the Church Inquisition. In this series, The Truth About the Church Inquisition, we aim to unravel the myths and reveal the complex realities behind the Inquisition's origins, evolution, and impact. Today we start with Part 1, the birth of the Inquisition, setting the stage for an epic journey through time. Historical context. To understand the birth of the Inquisition, we must first immerse ourselves in the vibrant and tumultuous world of 12th century Europe. This was a time of significant change and upheaval. Europe was a fragmented mosaic of feudal states, each ruled by local lords who wielded considerable power. Amidst this patchwork of territories, the Catholic Church stood as the only truly unifying institution, exerting immense spiritual and temporal influence. The Church was not only a religious authority, but also a political powerhouse. The Pope, as the head of the Church, held sway over kings and emperors, often acting as a mediator in conflicts and a dispenser of divine legitimacy. However, the Church's position was not unchallenged. The 12th century saw the rise of various heretical movements that threatened the Church's teachings and authority. One of the most significant of these movements was the Cathar heresy, which emerged in the Languedoc region of southern France. The Cathars, also known as Albigensians, believed in a dualistic universe, where a good spiritual god was in constant struggle with an evil material god. This belief led them to reject the material world, including the Church's sacraments and hierarchical structure, which they viewed as corrupt and decadent. Another notable heretical movement was the Waldensians, founded by Peter Waldo, a wealthy merchant from Lyon who experienced a profound religious conversion. Waldo and his followers preached a return to apostolic poverty and simplicity, criticizing the wealth and moral decay of the clergy. The Waldensians spread rapidly across Europe, challenging the established Church's practices and doctrines. The Church perceived these heretical movements as existential threats, not only to its spiritual authority, but also to the social and political order. Heresy was seen as a contagious disease that could undermine the faith of the masses and destabilize society. In response, the Church began to take steps to identify, judge, and eradicate heresy. First steps. The first significant step towards the formal establishment of the Inquisition came in 1184 with the Council of Verona. This council was convened by Pope Lucius III and Emperor Frederick I Barbarossa, bringing together religious and secular authorities to address the growing threat of heresy. The outcome of this council was the issuance of the papal bull, Ad Abolendam, which marked the beginning of the Church's organized efforts to combat heresy through systematic investigation and punishment. Pope Lucius III, born Ubaldo Alusinguli, played a crucial role in these early efforts. A man of great resolve and piety, Lucius III was determined to safeguard the unity and orthodoxy of the Church. His decree established a framework for bishops to conduct inquiries, or inquisitions, into heretical activities within their dioceses. This marked the first formal attempt by the Church to institutionalize the process of identifying and dealing with heresy. One of the prominent figures during this period was Saint Dominic, also known as Dominic de Guzman. Although not directly involved in the initial stages of the Inquisition, Dominic's efforts to preach against heresy and promote orthodox teachings laid the groundwork for the later involvement of the Dominican order in the Inquisition. Dominic traveled extensively, engaging in public debates with heretics and working tirelessly to convert them back to the Catholic faith. The early inquisitors were often monks and clerics, chosen for their theological knowledge and supposed incorruptibility. They were granted extraordinary powers to investigate and judge cases of heresy. One of the earliest and most influential inquisitors was Robert Le Bougre, a converted Cathar who became a zealous persecutor of his former co-religionists. His ruthless methods earned him the nickname, the Hammer of Heretics, reflecting the severity of his campaigns against heresy. Another significant figure was Bernard of Clairvaux, a Cistercian monk whose fiery sermons against heresy inspired many to take up the cause. Although Bernard himself was not an inquisitor, his influence on the religious climate of the time cannot be overstated. His impassioned rhetoric helped to galvanize the Church's efforts to combat heresy, rallying support for the emerging inquisitorial process. As the 12th century gave way to the 13th, the Inquisition began to take on a more organized and institutionalized form. Pope Innocent III, born Lotario dei Conti di Segni, was one of the most powerful and influential popes of the Middle Ages. His papacy, from 1198 to 1216, was marked by a series of crusades against heretics, most notably the Albigensian Crusade against the Cathars in southern France. This brutal campaign not only sought to eradicate heresy, but also to reassert papal authority over the region. The Fourth Lateran Council in 1215, convened by Innocent III, further solidified the Church's stance against heresy. The Council's decrees mandated that all heretics be excommunicated and their property confiscated. It also required secular authorities to assist the Church in its efforts to root out heresy, marking a significant step towards the formalization of the Inquisition. The groundwork laid by these early efforts culminated in the establishment of the Papal Inquisition in the 1230s under Pope Gregory IX, born Ugolino dei Conti di Segni. Gregory IX appointed special inquisitors, often members of the newly formed Dominican and Franciscan orders, to travel across Europe and investigate heresy. These inquisitors were granted wide-ranging powers, including the authority to imprison, torture, and execute suspected heretics. The birth of the Inquisition was a response to a complex web of spiritual, political, and social factors. It was an era marked by fervent belief, intense fear, and the struggle for control over the hearts and minds of medieval Europeans. As we continue our journey through the history of the Inquisition, we will see how these early efforts evolved into a powerful and often feared institution that would leave an indelible mark on history. Part 2. The Medieval Inquisition. Development of the Inquisition. With the groundwork laid by Pope Lucius III, Pope Innocent III, and Pope Gregory IX, the Inquisition began to evolve into a more organized and systematic institution. The 13th century witnessed the establishment of the Medieval Inquisition, which sought to standardize inquisitorial practices and extend the Church's reach in combating heresy. The Medieval Inquisition was characterized by the establishment of formal inquisitorial tribunals, which were often staffed by members of the Dominican and Franciscan orders. These tribunals operated with a high degree of autonomy and were granted extensive powers to investigate, judge, and punish heretics. The Dominicans, in particular, played a central role in the Inquisition, earning them the moniker Dominicanes, or Hounds of the Lord. Notable figures. Among the early inquisitors, several key figures stand out for their zeal and effectiveness in combating heresy. One of the most notable was Conrad of Marburg, a German priest and inquisitor known for his extreme severity. Appointed by Pope Gregory IX in the early 1230s, Conrad conducted a ruthless campaign against heresy in Germany, targeting both Cathars and Waldensians. His methods were so harsh that they eventually led to widespread resistance and his assassination in 1233. Another influential inquisitor was Bernard Guy, a Dominican friar who served as an inquisitor in southern France during the early 14th century. Bernard Guy is perhaps best known for his detailed manual, Practica Inquisitionis Hereticae Pravitatis, which outlined inquisitorial procedures and provided guidelines for identifying and prosecuting heretics. His meticulous records offer valuable insights into the workings of the medieval Inquisition. Methods and practices. The methods used by the medieval Inquisition to identify and prosecute heretics were both thorough and ruthless. Inquisitors conducted extensive investigations, often relying on informants and anonymous denunciations to identify suspected heretics. Those accused of heresy were subjected to intense interrogation, which sometimes included the use of torture to extract confessions. One of the most infamous torture devices used by the Inquisition was the strappado, in which the accused was suspended by their wrists, often resulting in dislocated shoulders. Another commonly used method was the rack, where the accused's limbs were slowly stretched to excruciating lengths. While torture was not always employed, its mere threat was often enough to secure confessions. Trials were conducted in secret, with the inquisitors serving as both judges and prosecutors. The accused were often denied legal representation, and the burden of proof was placed on them to prove their innocence. Punishments for heresy ranged from fines and confiscation of property to imprisonment and execution, usually by burning at the stake. The impact of the Inquisition. The impact of the medieval Inquisition on European society was profound and far-reaching. It created an atmosphere of fear and suspicion, where accusations of heresy could lead to severe consequences for individuals and entire communities. The Inquisition also reinforced the Church's authority, demonstrating its ability to exert control over both spiritual and temporal matters. However, the Inquisition also faced resistance and criticism. Some secular authorities, such as the Holy Roman Emperor Frederick II, supported the Inquisition and enacted harsh anti-heresy laws. Others, like King Louis IX of France, took a more cautious approach, balancing the need to combat heresy with concerns about the Inquisition's methods and potential abuses of power. Conclusion. The medieval Inquisition represents a significant and often dark chapter in the history of the Catholic Church. It was an institution born out of the Church's desire to maintain orthodoxy and control in a rapidly changing world, but it often resorted to extreme measures to achieve its goals. As we move forward in our series, We will continue to explore the evolution of the Inquisition, delving into its most notorious phase, the Spanish Inquisition. Stay tuned for Part 3, the Spanish Inquisition, where we will uncover the origins, key figures, and brutal methods of one of history's most infamous inquisitions.